Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today I have a guest, Rebecca Farley, who is coming on to talk about her business, running it while being a mom, and all of the money mindset, limiting beliefs that come up as a business owner. I know this is huge and we get a lot of questions on this. So I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I was just saying, I absolutely love the podcast so much. I think you've got so many helpful and valuable, really actionable tips in there. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of your podcast.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, money mindset has always been a big part of the podcast because just what I've found since I started with the law of attraction is that it's universal. Everybody has money mindset beliefs that can really hinder whatever it is you're trying to manifest. If you're in this like scarcity mindset, which we've all been programmed to have in our
Mhm.
society and our schooling and everything else. But with business owners, especially, it's like you really have to move past those blocks if you want your
Yeah.
business to grow and scale. And we
Yeah.
haven't talked about it as much from a business standpoint on the podcast. So I think this will be really interesting to see what came up for you. But maybe you can start out and just give a little background on what you do, why you started your business, all of that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So it's quite a long, vast story. So I'll try and keep it concise. But so my name's Rebecca. I'm based in the UK. I have a branding agency called Sugar Branded, which I started the best part of 7 years ago now when I was pregnant with my eldest son. So I'm a mum of two boys. I'm a co-parenting mum. At times I've been completely solo parenting. So that brings a whole other element to my experience of how I've experienced finances in my life and that responsibility, needing to push myself out of these like quite strong like mindset. Or I think as a single parent, sometimes you take on a lot of stereotypes and your ego can come into play as well when you're also thinking about your money mindset. So being a solo parenting mum has been a big part of my business journey as well. So now I work with my clients in helping them brand their business, grow their business. Some of my clients are launching product lines and really exciting things like that. So I'm really involved in the branding part of building businesses. And one of my core passions of why I do what I do is because I'm passionate about people having an income or a career that actually fulfills them, because I think it's just a heartbreaking scenario that so many of us go through life not living life on our own terms for whatever reason that might be. Um, we spend so much of our time working that I think it's so important to find something that we enjoy that fills us up, especially when you're a parent, because as you know, your kids take so much from you for most of the day that it's so nice that work can be something for us that we enjoy that fills us up. But that obviously still comes with its challenges.
Yeah, I feel like that's a limiting belief in itself. I know it's one that I went through where you're talking about doing something that you love, that you're passionate about, where it's on your terms. But I feel like that's the opposite of what we're raised to believe, or at least the way that I was. It was always, where do you want to work? What college do you want to go to? What company do you want to work for?
Mhm.
It was never, what type of business do you want to build, or what lights you
Mhm.
up, or how are you going to leave your mark on the world? Like those were never things that came up for me until I was in the regular 9 to 5 world and miserable. And then I started asking myself those questions. But it's like, why aren't we starting there versus starting with what companies you want to go work for?
Yeah, yeah. And I think you always feel like a bit of an anomaly when you're the person that's questioning the norm. I think especially so I'm 31 now, and I know that I'm probably the last of the generation where it was so normal to go to school, go to college, get a degree, and then you go into like your 9 to 5 and you work your way up in the company. That was how you became successful. I think now it's a lot more normal for people to at least try out entrepreneurship or some sort of side hustle. But I think that back when I was at university, it was definitely so normal just to work your way up in a job and not consider, is this actually what I want to do? Or is this just like the path that's been laid out for me? And I think when you take the leap into entrepreneurship or just even just exploring something that might fill you up and make you happy, it might be something you want to do, you definitely feel a little bit of an outsider, or it can feel like am I being a bit crazy here? Is there something wrong with me? Like, why am I going against the grain and telling down this financial security for something that is quite a high risk that you don't actually know is going to work out?
Absolutely. And it is a high risk. And so you said you started your business when you were pregnant. Is that right?
Yeah.
What was that like? Were you starting the business so you'd have more freedom? Or like, how did you have, I guess, the confidence and the courage to be like, I'm starting it now and I'm going to have this baby and I'm going to make it all work?
Yeah. So it's funny actually, because I was recording a podcast yesterday with a podcast as part of a community for mums who are in business. And we were talking about, is it the right time to start a business when you're on maternity leave? So for me, I've been a lifelong entrepreneur. Like ever since I was a child, I've been coming up with these business ideas and trying this way to make money and that way to make money. So it was always been part of me growing up. So when I started my business when I was pregnant with my eldest, it wasn't like my first ever business. Like I'd always had a side hustle when I was working. It was always something that I've done, but I don't come from a family that is entrepreneurial or ever had businesses. They've always been like very much in that 9 to 5, just working in a job that pays the bills type. That's the background that I come from. So I was the outsider and really trying something new with this business idea. But when I was pregnant, so rewind, so when I was in my career, my 9 to 5 job, right? I was working my way up in a job that I thought was something I was going to love. So I studied business and marketing at college or university, as you call it, in the UK. And I went straight into this job that was great for a straight out of college job. It was great. It's exactly what I thought I wanted. And then I got this block inside me where I was like going to the meetings and I was feeling like, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to progress in this environment. I just don't have the energy. I don't want this. It's not aligned with me. And I'm somebody that's like a workaholic. Like anything you get, even if I worked in a grocery store or anything, I will give 200% to that job because I love the work. So I'm not somebody that's, oh, I can't be bothered. I love to work. So I knew that for me, that was a massive alarm bell ringing when I didn't want to go for the next promotion. I didn't want to give 200% to what I was doing. That was a massive wake up call for me. And at that point, I decided to leave my 9 to 5 and just go fully self employed in like wherever I could make money. That's what I was going to do if it meant I didn't have to be at my 9 to 5. So I just jumped into it. At that point, I was child free. And it's so much easier to do that when you don't have big responsibilities and you can move back home. So I'm so glad I took that leap before I had kids. But I think it's a whole different experience when you have children because after you've had kids, you have no time, right? Your time is very limited. So you approach your business in a very different way. You have to be super efficient. I don't know about you, Stephanie, but I only do things that I really enjoy doing because I don't have time to do anything else, right?
Yeah, I've never
Um,
said no as much in my life as I have the
yeah,
past couple of years, just because you have to be so intentional with every minute of your time that
yeah,
you have free, because the rest of it is just taken up with kids.
yeah, exactly. So I think it was like being a parent is one of the biggest changes in your life, and also becoming a full-time business owner is also a massive transition in life. And I was like doing them together, which I'm almost glad I did it that way because I think if I knew what both of them entailed, I would have probably second guessed my decision because it's not been easy.
It's not easy at all, for sure. But it's also not easy to be stuck in a career or a job where you're miserable. And you had said something earlier how, like, you're a workaholic and you
Mm.
will give 200%. And that was a sign when you weren't doing that in your job. And I just wanted to highlight that because for me, there were times where I would think, what is wrong with me? I'm so lazy. And what happened to my work ethic? And I'm just not a good employee. It wasn't any of those things. It was just that I was doing something I wasn't passionate about. And so I
Mm.
think that's something people can look at right now. Are you feeling like you don't want to go for the next promotion? You don't want to give even 100% to your
Mhm.
job. Maybe it has nothing to do with you being lazy. It just has to do with you being out of alignment with something that you truly want to do.
Yeah, exactly. And that is something I'd love to touch on about the being a workaholic. 'Cause I think it's something that a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs can relate to. And it's not always the healthiest thing, right? So in my experience, being a workaholic has got me to where I am in like the fact that I will always have always prioritized my career. I've always worked so hard. I will put in any hours as necessary to get to the next step. But recently for me, I've changed the way that I've been working. So when I first started my business, I was very much delivering things for my clients. So I started off as just a graphic designer. So I would make things for my clients, design things for my clients. And that was my job. So it was almost going from an employed role as an employee where I was giving tasks to do to moving to having tasks given to me by my clients. So it's the same thing, really. I was still in a job. And at first, that was amazing because I was used to working in that way. I was used to being in that mindset of being an employee. And when I started making money in my own business, I thought, this is great. It's working. I don't have to go back to a job because I'm making more money than when I was employed. It's great. But then fast forward 7 years later, and all these things are coming up about my money mindset and the beliefs that I've held since I was a child that have got me to this point. But I know deep down that I've been ready for that next step, that I can offer more, that I'm capable of more. And so it's really forced me to look at how I approach work in terms of like my mindset, having boundaries, thinking about how I feel about money. All of those things have been absolutely huge transitions for me at this point in my career.
Yeah. So what did that transition look like? Like when you were like, okay, I'm going to level up and I'm going to offer this new thing. Did you have moments where you were doubting yourself? Were all of your old limiting beliefs coming up? Like, how did that sort of play out?
Yeah, massively. So I think one of the first things is one of the things I've learned in terms of creating a sustainable business that you can actually grow and scale and is actually going to become a business in itself and runs without you is that you need to be generating the revenue to support that, right? And that's usually very hard to do when you're only trading your time or delivering things for in exchange for a set price. So you need to understand that you need to charge for your value and not just obviously your time. So if you're in a role, an employed role, for example, you might work an hour and get paid $20, for example. When you're working in a business, you need to make sure that you're charging much more than that. So when I was still doing deliverables, I was charging quite a good rate. But when I started doing coaching and consultation, it opened up the much more time freedom for me, which was really important for me to be able to scale my business. And it was really hard because I was so used to providing things for my clients like all the time. I'd be working all day on making things for my clients. Was when I switched to coaching and consulting, sometimes I wouldn't hear from my clients all day. And that made me feel so uneasy because I was like, they don't need me. What if they must not be happy with me because I'm not literally doing stuff for them all day? I was questioning my worth. I was questioning if I was doing a good job. But really what it was is that I wasn't understanding that I have value beyond literally just delivering things for people. And I think that something that when you become a business owner, you have to understand that your values in growing that business and making those business decisions and not just actually delivering things directly for your clients.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that's so common. So, how did you overcome that? Like, how did you move forward and not let that get in your head to the point where you had so much doubt? You're like, I shouldn't do this or I shouldn't raise my prices.
Yeah. I think it helped that I'd done a lot of kind of like mindset work up until that point. Because I think sometimes we can, and you probably see this a lot, but sometimes you can be aware of these beliefs and these mindsets that you carry. But when you are up against it in a real life scenario, your subconscious still takes over. Like you still
Yep.
will revert back into that default state of thinking and feeling. So I think it's really important that you can observe how you're feeling and not act on it. So for me, I could observe that I was doubting my value and doubting how much I was happy with my clients because I hadn't heard from them all day. But if I just observed that feeling, I knew that was just an emotion that I was going through and it wasn't actually the reality of the situation. So I think it's important for us to separate the two. so that we can work through those feelings when it comes to our mindset.
I love that because I found the same thing in my life. Like, I know there's so many ways out there to overcome limiting beliefs and shift your mindset. But for me, it's always just been awareness of it. It's as soon as I have awareness of it, I'm like, oh, that's bullshit. And I'm not
Yeah.
going to choose to let that take over my mind. And I just choose a better belief. And I think sometimes we overcomplicate things. Like, you don't have to do all of these different things to overcome it. You can simply observe it and have awareness.
Mhm.
And once your conscious mind becomes aware of it, it can command the subconscious mind to not accept that anymore and to accept a new
Yeah.
belief. So it
Yeah.
sounds like that's where you were at with that.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it helps to look at the reality and facts of the situation as well. Like, say, for example, if you are like, think of an example. If you're a business owner and you want to charge a certain amount for your services, and then you put a pitch together, and then you don't hear back from somebody, and you worry that the pitch was too high, or you're being greedy, or you're charging too much for what you offer, and you're thinking all these negative thoughts. But if you actually ask that person, they might just say, "Oh, sir, I was really busy. I didn't get a chance to come back to you," or you've already had several clients booking it for you at that price. So clearly it's not an issue with your pricing or your value. It's just these anxious feelings just coming from your own perception of the situation.
Yeah, I just found this prompt for, I don't know if you ever use Chat GPT or like any of the
Mhm.
AI, but the prompt was basically where it's directing the AI to find real life, or even it doesn't have to be real life. It could even be like fictional stories, but to find examples of someone else who already achieved what you want to achieve. Because the
Mhm.
subconscious mind doesn't know if it's reality or fantasy, but if you
Mhm.
can provide evidence of other people achieving it, it can like immediately shift things where all of a sudden something that seemed impossible is now possible because other
Mhm.
people achieved it. And I mean, you don't need AI to do that. You can just look to other people, can be listening to you right now, and you could be that evidence for their mindset that, yes, I
Mhm.
can do this. So that's just another thing too. It's the same as bringing awareness. It's just taking it one step further and finding evidence in your environment.
Mhm.
Um, but I wanted to ask you because I think for me, something that's come up a lot as a business owner is you're going to constantly grow and evolve. But I feel like every time I get to that next level, I feel like I can't do this because everybody knows me for this. And how can I just
Mhm.
shift to this? Did you
Mhm.
have any of that when you went from doing everything for them to coaching clients? Like, how did you, did you just shift one day? Did you let your audience know? Like, how did you go about that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So I will say I'm still going through that shift currently. So I've tried to lay out October for me to do that transition. So I'm literally in the thick of it at the moment. And I will say, I think if I didn't have the belief in myself that I knew I was capable of doing this thing that I wanted to do, that I would really struggle to do it. Because, for example, you might have current clients you've had for years that you've been charging a certain rate for or doing certain things for that you no longer want to do. And it's really hard to say no to them. But I think it comes from the experience of knowing that things only change when things change. So if you want your life and the trajectory of your life to change, you need to make changes. If you keep accepting the same things, whether that's your old rates that you want to charge or doing jobs that you don't want to do or working with people that you don't want to do, nothing is going to change as much as you convince yourself that it's just this one last project or it's only this client. It's not going to change. So I think you need to draw a line. And I think the confidence to do that comes from the experience of having done it in little steps again and again, if that makes sense. I think it'd be really hard to go from having a really poor, stuck mindset to making big changes, which I think is why podcasts like yours are so important because it opens up people's minds to bringing in little bits of progress into their life in terms of changing how they see things.
I agree 100%. I feel like if you go from 0 to 100, it's too much for
Mhm.
most people, pretty much everyone, just because of the subconscious. It's just such a drastic shift. But
Yeah.
these little incremental shifts and just like slowly evolving over time, makes
Mhm.
sense. And then again, like back to the evidence thing, I think seeing people like you, like anyone that's listening to this podcast and hearing, okay, she pivoted and changed her business in a way that works best for her. It gives people permission to do the same. Like it's okay to shift. It's okay to do things differently. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to say
Yeah.
no to
Mhm.
clients that you've always done a certain thing for. And
Yeah.
I feel like I needed to hear that too. So you're
Yeah.
giving me permission to do the same thing because it is hard. It's not like
Yeah.
it's just you snap your fingers and voila. Like
Yeah.
you have to work through all these things that your mind tells you, which most of them are not true. Like your mind makes it
Yeah.
out to be so much worse than it actually is, right?
Yeah. And I find it so funny because it's almost like there's so much education and so much valuable information out there available to people that want to change or want to grow a business or want to achieve any goal. And it's so funny that we have all this information at our fingertips, but it still takes years to actually make it happen because it's all about our mindset and you can't go from 0 to 100, like you said. So even if you might know exactly what you need to do, we all take so long to actually work through that and get to that point, which I think is why it's so important to have a coach or something like that, or a community that can hold you accountable, give you the confidence to say, you can do it, like just go for it. Otherwise, when you're in your own head, battling with your own mindset issues and like all sorts of things, it can really take a long time to see any sort of progress. It'll be really gradual.
That is so true. I've noticed that with myself because I
Yeah.
have had a lot of coaches and mentors throughout the years. And when I don't, I feel like I don't make that progress
Mhm.
because I'm just constantly doubting myself. But then if I have a coach and they're like, what are you talking about? Of course you can do this. And I'm
Yeah.
expecting you to do this by the time we have our next call. It's like just having someone else tell you that can completely transform so many beliefs. And it's just like, you know what? You're right. I can do this.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's
Mhm.
all people need is just that like encouragement and someone to be there with them as they're going through the scary thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you haven't come from like a family background or you don't already have a ready built network and community of people that think in a certain way, then all that work in changing your mindset is on you. And you don't really have any like support system ready to go to help you get to that next level.
Yeah, it's so true. And when you said earlier about these little incremental shifts, I think that's another reminder of why, if you want to do something, like you want to start a business, start right now. The best time to start is today, because if you
Mhm.
start today, then think about how many little incremental shifts you will have made a year from now. But we sometimes think I have to get everything right first. So it's
Mhm.
perfect on day one, but it's never going to be perfect on day one. But if you start day one now, then by the time you get to day 100, things are going to be a lot better than if you
Yeah.
just wait and think about it and ruminate about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Done is always better than perfect for sure. Because you
Yes.
need time to learn any new skill, and starting a business or changing your mindset is a skill that needs to be learned over time.
It is. I love that. It's a skill just like anything else that you're doing, your mindset. You have to like work out with it. It's like you don't go to the
Mhm.
gym and lift like the heaviest weight. You have to build up to that. And that's the same
Yeah.
with anything mindset, manifestation, anything.
Yeah.
So, do you have any like last tips or advice that you would give to someone who's in that phase where it's okay, I want to scale my business or I want to do things differently and I'm freaking out. I don't think I can do it. What would you tell them?
Yeah. That is a great question. I think I'd approach it from the relevance of the podcast from a mindset point of view. So, from my experience, when I was scaling my business, I had to get out of my own lived experience of money, right? And the more I did that, the more my mind opened to the possibilities of financial abundance. Because if you come from, say, for example, if you've come from a background of poverty, then your normal that you've grown up with is a certain level of people might not be able to invest in their business. People might not have this disposable income. People might be struggling to pay for food, and that's your normal. So when you go to thinking about how much you can charge, you're living in your lived experience, and you don't realize how much money is out there and how much people can actually afford to invest until you push those boundaries and what people are willing to pay for certain things. And I think once you've understood that, the next challenge is removing that guilt from money as well. So, for example, if to you, like charging $10,000 for a service is a huge amount, then you're going to really struggle to ask for that amount of money. But you need to understand that to other people, it's all relative. Like that might not be a huge amount. And for them, you might be worth twice that amount of money. So I think it's about opening like your perspective of money and not coming from your lived experience. I think if you're always coming from how you've experienced money in the past, you're going to become really stuck and unable to move forward. So that's been like a massive thing for me personally.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's so true. There's clients at every price point. And it's just what environment are you putting yourself in too? And the more you network and the more you do coaching yourself, like seeking out other coaches, you
Yeah.
start to see there's so much more out there than what we've
Mhm.
been exposed to. And
Mhm.
you really get to choose what you want. It's just getting comfortable with it, making that your new normal.
And I think it also goes both ways. Like in that, do you need to go?
Um, oh no, okay. It's my husband that pulled in. So
Okay.
I'll let him take care of the windshield. Sorry,
My last
didn't mean to
point,
be
the last
distracting.
point I was going to say was I think it works both ways. So on that point, I think the more that you invest in your business and the more that it's like an experiment. So when I first hired a coach, before I hired a coach, I was a bit skeptical of coaches and am I going to waste my money or can they really tell me stuff I don't know? But when I saw the results of working with a coach, I was like, this was worth every penny and more. I'm not saying every coach is going to be worth it, but when you start investing in your money and really seeing the results of it, then you'll feel more comfortable charging other people to work with you because you can actually see the value. I think if we approach from a place where we're scared to invest and we're scared to spend money ourselves, it's not going to come back to you, and you're going to be uncertain when you're charging other people for your services. So I think it's really important to at least experiment and you invest in your business, and you'll get that confidence to know that you are actually really valuable to other business owners.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's something that I've struggled with my whole life because I grew up that way where it's not okay to spend a lot of money and
Yeah.
you always have to get the best deal. And so in my business, I've had to really push past that. And it's when you invest in you have to look at it as like an investment. It's not like I'm going to spend this money and it's gone forever because that was the mindset I used to have. And I really had to
Mhm.
shift and think, this is not spending it or wasting it. This is investing. And if I invest in someone who is a couple steps ahead of me that can guide me, and like I said earlier, just give me a little bit of encouragement when I get stuck,
Yeah.
I'm going to get my money back tenfold because it's going to push me out of my comfort zone and push me to the next level. And that was probably the hardest shift for me as a business owner. And the way you said it just made me realize that I didn't even realize till now I had to work so hard to get to that point, but it made such
Yeah.
a big difference because it shifted me from scarcity, like this is money that's lost forever, to abundance. This is money I'm investing and this is going to help me get to the next level income that I'm trying to get to.
Exactly. Yeah.
I feel like that's going to be like a aha moment. So thanks for pointing that out. That's a big one. I know some people spend freely, but a lot of people don't. And if you're one that has a hard time spending or you've hoarded money like me, that's probably the biggest thing as a business owner is to go from like, when you're in a business, if you want to grow and scale, you have to invest. And the best investment you can do is investing in yourself.
Mhm.
And that's what you're offering now, right? You're doing more coaching and consulting for your clients.
Yeah, yeah, because I feel so niching down really like talking about branding and design. Since I started my business 7 years ago, the tools and the way that we as small business owners market ourselves has shifted. So when I first started, Canva wasn't great. There weren't really great website builders. Personal branding was less of a thing. It was more like, this is my business logo and all of this stuff. And it's shifted massively since then. I'm pivoting my services to support what small business owners need now. And I know that is to create a really strong personal brand so that they can get speaking opportunities and create a popular podcast. And people will buy into a person quicker than they'll buy into a business. So I recognize that as a trend in the industry. And that's what I'm supporting with my clients with at the moment, which I love to do because, like I said, I've seen the results of working with somebody like a coach that's there to support you and encourage you and give you advice or even a different perspective or maybe how you're approaching things. And I've already seen the value of that. So yeah, that's something that I'm working with my clients with on now, as well as a little bit of design stuff as well for products and things like that.
I'm so happy to hear you're like the only person I have heard really talking about this lately because I've been
Mm-hmm.
talking about podcasting a lot as like a marketing tool to grow your brand, like your personal
Mm-hmm.
brand, and how it's just, in my opinion, it's so much more effective than
Yeah.
any other medium because you're getting people to tune in and give you like a lot of their time where they're getting to know you on such a deeper level. And I just love that you recognize that and you're talking about that because I'm like, why isn't everyone talking about
I
this?
know.
This is the best kept secret for marketing, growing, building your brand, scaling your business. And yet I don't really hear many people talking about podcasting like from that perspective. So I think it's
Yeah.
really smart, definitely ahead of the curve by recognizing that.
Yeah, thank you. I do. I love having my clients understand that and really getting to growing their personal brand. And podcasting is amazing. And it's so much more fun, right? Than creating just Instagram content. But obviously, a whole like side note, but you probably do the same. Like I use my podcast to create the rest of my content, but I just find it so much more enjoyable to create than like the standard, like other social media stuff that we're expected to make nowadays. They're so much fun podcasts.
Yeah, I agree. And like with social media, if I post a reel, like after a day, maybe a week, like no one's
Yeah,
going to see it.
it's gone.
But
Yeah.
every single day, I have people that will message me and they'll be listening to an episode. I think you were one where you were
Yeah.
like, oh, I heard you. I forget what podcast you heard me on, but it was a while back, like a long time
Yeah.
ago. And
Yeah.
you just now heard that episode. So it's this content. People are finding it every day where you don't really get that on social media. So it is
Yeah.
just such a unique platform.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. Where can everybody find you, follow you, all the things?
Yeah, sure. Mainly on Instagram. So my Instagram is at sugarbranded. And if anyone has any branding questions or wants to talk about being a single parent or anything like that, you can always DM me. What I do usually if somebody has a branding question, I'll record like a video response to it and share it. So if you have any questions, drop me a message at sugarbranded. And my website where you can view my work if you want to work together is www.sugarbranded.com.
And your website, of course, is beautiful. And yeah, everyone should follow you. And just one last question before you go.
Sure.
What are you currently trying to manifest? And it doesn't even have to be with your business. It could be about parenting, personal life, big or small, it doesn't matter. But what's one thing that's on your mind lately that you want to call into your life?
Yeah, that is a really fun question because, like I said, this month I've taken to really try and change my life essentially. And so I would say freedom. And that is the first time I would ever have answered it that way. Like previously to that, it would be a house. That's a really big thing for me, being able to buy a house. Or that's probably been my whole goal since I was a young adult. And this is probably the first time I would answer that question with freedom. Because I used to feel like manifesting freedom was a bit like, why do I need freedom? Because I love my work and I love being busy. Like, I don't need more freedom. But that's something that's really important to me right now. I think because I hit a place where I was almost at burnout for the first time ever. And I realized that things need to change. So if I was going to manifest anything, it would be freedom.
That's how you leveled up because I always tell people like it's not the money. Money's great. And
Yeah.
yes, we should all want abundance, but it's never about the money. It's
Mhm.
usually about the freedom that the money can provide. And
Yeah.
so to answer that question like that, like you can tell you've leveled up massively. So
I
congratulations on
hope
that.
so. Thank you so much. I'm definitely going to have to be binging through the podcast to help me think 'cause it's going to be a hard transition, when you go from stepping off that fully booked, busy treadmill to jumping off it into nothingness while you figure out how you're going to get this freedom. I think a podcast like yours is so helpful to have as a guide. So, yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, keep me posted on your success, and we'll have to have an updated episode down the road and you can talk about how your business has just gone
Yeah.
massively successful and update
I hope
everyone.
so.
All right, Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. This was amazing. You had so many pieces of wisdom that I think are going to really help people move forward. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.